So a big hand for her.
Bueno, buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. I think that the most important message that I would like you to take home regarding sustainability is to understand that what comes to mind when we speak about sustainability, we are thinking about saving the whales and Greta Thunberg and so on and so forth. And you may think, why do I need to save the planet? What does that have to do with me? So I'm going to try to explain what it has to do with you, to what extent it has to do with you. And it's important to bear in mind that sustainability is not an option any longer, because we are in a European context with very clear goals as regards clean energies and net zero carbon buildings and facilities. Just to summarize, those goals can be summarized by saying that by 2030 we have to drastically reduce the carbon footprint of buildings, and by 2050 the goal in Europe is to have all buildings fulfilling that goal of net zero carbon footprint. That is to say, the goals that we need to achieve are just around the corner. It's tomorrow. It is not a question of ideology or something that you can postpone. It is something that is here to stay, and it's already in the market. Just to clarify the concept, the simple concept, the net zero carbon buildings are those that consume the same energy that they produce. And in order to achieve that goal, we need to solve two problems. We need to improve the efficiency to the extent that is possible, on the one hand, and on the other hand, the energy that they need to produce. And we need to solve that use of energy within the building itself to the extent possible. There are different organizations that are dealing with the topic, providing criteria and so on. And just for you to give you some context, I can tell you that in 2019, only 16% of the companies were committed to this question, and now we are at 68%. So you realize here that this is no personal option. It has to do with the market and what the market demands. And just for you to visualize what are the companies that are committing to those goals. How do we go about this? How do we turn a building into a net zero carbon one? First, we have to understand where our asset is located, both physically and also along that journey, and what we can improve. Once that is clear, we have to establish strategies to improve the functioning of the building, to prepare it so that it can receive clean energies to the extent possible. We need also to generate that energy within the building, and to the extent that is not possible, we need to purchase clean energy somewhere else, so that we reach this net zero balance between what we consume and what we produce. Energy, anyway, is only one part of the European Union strategy for sustainability. And in that sense, 1 year ago, more or less, a new regulation was approved about sustainable finance. And what they say is that Europe is going to force us to be sustainable. Perhaps they cannot force us right now, but we have to publicize to what extent we are sustainable. And that's already an obligation. And they established 3 wide categories. And this is, of course, for funds with a certain size. But just to give you the context, what this regulation establishes is that there are 3 possibilities for assets, be it real estate or any other type of asset, but you have to frame each of your assets within one of those options. The first is, I am not sustainable, I am not doing anything, and I'm not implementing any policy regarding sustainability. The second is, I'm working on it, I'm implementing policies, I'm taking measures. And the third is I have a clear commitment to sustainability, and that is part of my company's DNA. How do we measure whether something is sustainable or not? That is a question that is open to discussion, of course. But in the European Union, they have established several parameters. I think they can be seen better here regarding the actions to mitigate climate change, also being part of a circular economy, and so a whole set of things, pollution, and a set of factors that have been considered like the heading, and you will belong to this classification. You will be included in one of these options depending on how much respect you are showing for this classification. What happens then? The European Union is not telling you you have to do this and that, but they do tell you that you are going to have a visibility, and your image as a company will be linked to the fact that you are or are not sustainable. And just to give you a very quick overview of the market, we know that the environmental legislation is improving and is becoming more and more demanding. Health and safety and well-being are also topics that are coming into play. Lots of people are getting certifications, and we will see it in a while, but reports such as the GRESB 1 are qualifying and categorizing the market, so that the question is not any longer whether I want to do it or not, is how are the rest doing and how am I doing compared to the rest. And how can we turn our company in a sustainable one? This is not a simple question. It does not necessarily have to do with specific measures like using solar panels or not. You have to define a strategy that ideally should be specific to each company, so an individual or customized strategy. So first, you have to find out where you are at. Not every asset is located in the same place. Not all have implemented the same sustainability measures, and so on. So once we are clear about our specific position, we need to see where the others are and see whether our competitors are already implementing ESG measures, or if they are doing it, how they are doing it and how they are positioning themselves. And once we do that, we have to define our own sustainability actions so that ends up defining us as a company. And next, we establish a plan to reach those goals, so a sort of roadmap. So in the end, the question is first to define those goals that you have set for yourself, to make that become part of our DNA as a company. Then we have to go through an analysis to see those are my goals, this is my destination, and I have to define a roadmap to get from here to there. And that comes hand in hand with an investment plan that will not be achieved overnight. So we have to draw a map or a timeline to reach milestones. And once we have that clear in mind, we need to to monitor each of our assets and see what goals and milestones are completed. And if we do things right, the result should be that if we are able to get some certifications, which is the way we have to communicate that we are committed to those sustainability goals, as a consequence, we should make an assessment report that assets should have increased its value. Just to mention a few actions that can be implemented as a general overview, because as I said, every asset should have its own DNA, its own customized project, and not all sustainability measures are applicable to every asset. But just for you to have an idea, I would say that for environmental purposes, measures that could be considered would be the reuse of water, the study of lighting so that it is more efficient, the recycling of waste, the air quality, and so on. Then for social topics, I think that the most relevant is first what anything that has to do with the well-being and welfare of the employees, then the community surrounding your assets. They need to get some kind of benefit for in exchange for your presence there. And then in the third part, governance, then would be a question of employment policies that you implement and risk management, measures that you have implemented in the company in order to improve governance. Hence, the outcome that you should achieve once you have implemented your strategy, apart from your positioning as a leading company in the market and in the sector, the visibility of your company as a benchmark or as a reference, there are some other questions that are also important. Like, for example, if you implement that and you prove that you have done it and your metrics show that it is the case, that will have as a result the possibility to access bank loans that can have more interesting conditions, like, for example, interest rates and also other clean funding sources. And this is more or less what I explained, how you have to cascade down that strategy. And last but not least, the way in which you communicate to your customers, to the competition. If, for example, someone wants to purchase a company, wants to, your communication to the community are just to provide visibility for those ESG plans and all those goals that you have achieved. And the best way to do that is to get one of the certifications or seals of quality. It doesn't make sense to get certifications for everything and several certifications. I think that the certification that you choose should be the consequence of the analysis you did to realize who you want to become within this market. There are seals that have to do with health and safety and wealth, or with net zero carbon, and there are all sorts of seals or hallmarks, and you have to also do an analysis here in order to find out which are the best ones for you and which one represents best the values of your company. And then go for it within your ESG plan and at least get some or one of those certifications so that you provide visibility to your effort in that area. But then within the seals that are more valuable, I would recommend Engresby, which is specialized in this type of asset. And what they do is they do a study of the real estate sector as a whole, and according to your information, they will position you within the market. That's why this is an interesting seal of quality for you. And that's all. Thank you. Okay, that's perfect. So perhaps we can have a Q&A session. Let's see if there are questions for you. Microphone. There at the back.
Por ahí. O sea, los del fondo me señaláis que...
Those at the back, you are pointing towards somewhere. Okay. Hi.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You just talked about from a commercial viewpoint, the interest that an individual user might have or a company might have when Self-Storage has some sort of certification or somehow promotes actively well, these aspects, or if they use solar energy, or if the venue or the facilities have a social or some sort of social participation, but like supporting some sort of campaigns. Okay, it's the same question, but there are two different things. On the one hand, we've got individuals, and we might wonder if they are willing to invest more just because a company or self-storage company is more sustainable or less sustainable. But you also ask what happens with companies, and there is, I mean, that's not as much open for debate, because as I was saying, in real estate, there's a very clear bet on ESG. That's also happening in all sorts of companies. So what I would like to try to tell you is that it's not just an opinion. It's not a matter of the fact that whoever's going to hire us is more or less interested in it. According to the ESG policies implemented by many companies, it's going to be less and less allowed. It's going to be forbidden to hire companies that haven't got an ESG strategy in terms of just hiring you or renting spaces from you, or even be purchased in the future. So there are two things. We can have more or less aware customers, but when you're dealing with B2B, when you're talking in these deals, the implementation of ESG policies is growing extremely fast. So if we have established in a green book in our company that the other companies that we work for need to have this strategy, they're just not going to include you. You're going to be excluded. But thank you, Laura. I just wanted to see if you could explain the GRESB certificate and how that can be implemented in our assets, because I think I understood that it could be segmented in industrial buildings. And sorry, can you speak a bit louder? Yeah, please. I wanted to know how GRESB works for infrastructure industrial buildings, if they really have a segment that targets this kind of assets specifically. But what GRESB is doing is to carry out an analysis by sector, and what they do within that assessment with the data you send is to place you. So as I was mentioning before, when a group or a company wants to work with you, I mean, it's easier for them to check that ranking and see where you are. And because if GRESB says I'm well positioned, there isn't much more to talk about, really. It's a certification or a dynamic index, I guess. So by comparison, it's benchmarking. So how often do you need to? It's annual, every year, yes. Okay. Great. Any other question for Laura? Otherwise, I mean, of course, well, I guess that in small groups they can ask any sort of question, because some people might not dare to do it here, or maybe they want to have a bit more time. Well, huge hand for Laura de Plata.